Hi, everybody. This is Shelly with the Family Recovery Conference, and I'm excited to have another great provider here with us today to share some or answer some questions about the different modalities of therapy. I have Dr. Holly Daniels, who is doing two sessions with us for the Family Recovery Conference. One is on supporting the siblings and bringing recovery home, and the other is demystifying therapy for families and why that matters. So welcome. Thanks for being with us today.
Thank you, Shelly, so much. I'm so happy to be here. Yes, I've been working with families and couples and individuals for many, many years now, and I am an expert in eating disorder and substance use disorder, and I'm just so happy that you're putting this conference on, Shelly. So grateful and thankful and so happy to be a part of it.
Well, thank you. It's important. We were talking before that, we just, as family members, don't know what we don't know. But if we can really push that information out there, it's very helpful. And I went through different therapy modalities through our journey in our family, but I feel like a lot of people don't know, like, what are all those letters: CBT, DBT, EMDR, motivational interviewing, all those things, and then why would they be important for a family member to use them or to benefit? What's the benefit for the family member?
Right. Yeah, I think it's a really good question. I think that in general, it can be really intimidating, right, to ask for help. And people don't know a lot about psychology or therapy because it's not talked about in general society that much. And although it is changing, I think the stigma is reducing about going to therapy or asking for help. But then it can get even more intimidating because there are so many different modalities of therapy and so many different letters. And so I'm always happy to talk about, what all of those different modalities are. Therapy in general is first and foremost just to help people feel better and give people the tools that they need to make better choices, to let go of old unhealthy patterns that they might not even realize that they have. It's about bringing the unconscious into the conscious understanding so that we know ourselves better and we know why we're making choices that aren't so good for us so that we can make different choices and move forward from any kind of hurt that we've experienced in the past and make our lives better. So it's a really beautiful thing. I know it can be intimidating sometimes to have to ask for help, but it's a really wonderful experience, I think, to go through a therapy process and be able to, find out for yourself why you're doing the things you're doing, and then be able to make different choices and feel better in the world and feel better in your relationships.
When I first went into therapy, one of my questions was, I just need to know what my part is in all of this so that I can shift my behavior or my responses to what's happening. And I think that was helpful to understand that while, you hear that it's not your fault and you didn't cause it and those things, you do have a response that can be helpful or hurtful, or even a denial that can be hurtful, right? To the situation.
Absolutely. Yeah. And what you're talking about there is, what we call family systems work. And especially when we're talking about substance use disorders or, things that happen to us even at a young age that are really unhealthy and unhelpful. We have to understand that we are all relational beings and that we all developed and grew up in a family system, and that we have to look at the whole system. And so it is really important when we're working with an emerging adult, a young adult who is struggling, to be able to talk to the parents and look at the whole family system, not just the emerging adult or young adult who's struggling. And Shelly, you were already so advanced when you came into this process, I have to say, to be able to say, what's my part? Because a lot of times there is, a resistance on the part of the parents to want to look at their part because they haven't done their own work and they're still hurting. You know, when we come in and we're working with a young adult who is hurting, the parents are hurting too, and they might be hurting from their own past and their own life experience, and they don't know it and they haven't looked at it yet. And so it feels really scary to be in a, you know, a group room in a therapy session and have a therapist say, let's look at everybody's parts, because that means that everybody has to get a little vulnerable and open up and talk about their life experience. And it can be scary, but it is so healing and so wonderful when you can get to the point where you can say, what's my part? Because then you have power to change it.
Right.
When we know what our part was, and when we know what we did that maybe wasn't the best or wasn't the most helpful, then we can make a different decision and do a different thing. But until we know, you know, what was unhealthy in the dynamic, how can we change it?
The group thing, and having the neutral party there, a therapist or, you know, someone who's trained in intervention or something like that, really helps to take out, I feel, the shame, blame, and guilt of the situation. And then we're actually looking at like the problem. So it's not all that person's fault or that person's fault, or, but okay, so what is really the underlying issue behind the behavior or behind the pain?
Exactly. And when we can get to the pain, then we're really talking, right? Then we can really do some healing. And a lot of times we're not necessarily allowing our own pain or our own struggle to be what's at the forefront. We have all of these defense mechanisms, and that's a therapy word, right? Where we have, when we're feeling pain or we're feeling uncomfortable, we get defensive, or we isolate, or we you know, distract, or we do different things instead of really dealing with the pain. So when we can come into an environment in a therapy situation and yeah, have that objective and compassionate therapist there with you to help you all kind of let go of your defense mechanisms a little bit, so that we can get to what's really at the basis of what's going on. And it is always hurt and pain and struggle. And when we can get to that softer place, you know, we can fix it. We can figure out, okay, well then what do we do to make it better and help everybody feel better? And it is that objective, compassionate person who is the therapist, hopefully, who can help everybody gently let go of their defense mechanisms and start talking about what's underneath.
What are some of those modalities? Like, so people say, oh, DBT changed our life, or you really should try CBT. And I mean, people are like, I don't know what that is. What's EMDR? So can you speak to like each one of those and kind of say what their benefits are?
Yes. So in psychology, and we're talking about therapy, there are kind of like two big sections of work. And one work is kind of what we were talking about just now, that underlying unconscious motivation work, looking back and figuring out, why do I make the decisions I make? Why, you know, what are the patterns that I bring to relationships and into the world? And that's more psychodynamic, traditional talk therapy. And that's really important. That's an important piece. But then there's the behavioral piece. We are creatures of habit. Human beings develop habits and patterns of behavior. And we also in therapy want to look at, what are your, you know, habits? What are you habitually going to feel better? Because even if we fix the underlying condition, if we don't look at the behaviors too and really explicitly, openly talk about changing your lifestyle and changing your behaviors, we need, you know, it's not going to work. So we need both, right?
Mm-hmm.
So traditional talk therapy is, and trauma therapies are more that first piece, looking at the underlying causes of things, helping our brains and our bodies heal from any relational traumas or acute big T traumas that we've gone through, and helping us heal internally and bringing those unconscious pains to the conscious level so that we can really look at them and deal with them. And so when we're talking about trauma therapy, it's EMDR, which is eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, which is using different techniques and protocols to kind of help reprocess difficult memories and stuck memories that are kind of keeping us stuck in a place of being scared all the time, or not, or being afraid of relationship, or not being able to trust. There's somatic experiencing, which is also a trauma therapy, or different experiential therapies like equine therapy. If you go to a lot of treatment centers have equine therapy, or sand play therapy, or different therapies that are meant to kind of get to those deeper emotional places without re-traumatizing the person who's going through that emotional phase. And those are kind of deeper unconscious therapies that can be really helpful. When we get into CBT, DBT, there's EFT too, which is a little bit of both. There's acceptance and commitment therapy, ACT. Those are more looking very explicitly at what you're thinking, how you're behaving, how they're connected, how your emotions play in there, so that you can actually start building a skill set and a tool set to deal with uncomfortable emotions that come up and make healthier decisions, or recalibrate your thinking so that you're thinking in a healthier way and you make a healthier decision and change your behavior. So CBT is cognitive behavioral therapy, which means that I'm cognitive, I'm looking at what I'm thinking and seeing how I'm thinking affects my emotions and makes me behave in a certain way into maybe that habit, that unhealthy habit. Like, so I think I'm really stressed out, or I don't like myself, or I'm going to lose my relationship. I have that thought and I think I'm a bad person. Life sucks anyway. And then my behavior is I'm going to reach for a drink or a drug because I just feel really uncomfortable and I need something to soothe me. And instead, cognitive behavioral therapy is saying, like, well, let's look at that original thought and see if we can change that original thought. Stop the negative thinking, start to think more positive things. You know, maybe I did lose my relationship, but I tried the best I could, and I'm in therapy, I'm doing what I need to do. I'm going to be able to make better decisions later. And what can I do to help myself feel even better? I'm going to go to the gym, or I'm going to go for a jog, or I'm going to go talk to my friend or my sponsor or my therapist. And so that's what CBT is, changing your thoughts so that it changes your behavior. DBT is dialectical behavioral therapy, which is from CBT, but it also talks more about the emotional part and the emotional dysregulation. And it brings a lot of mindfulness work, although CBT is mindful too, right? This is all mindfulness work. We're paying attention to our mind, what our mind is thinking, and how that's affecting the way we behave. DBT is really skills-based, giving you real, really explicit, instruction about when you're feeling upset, this is what I'm going to do. When I start to recognize that I'm feeling uncomfortable, this is what I'm going to do. And it has really, specific protocols about keeping track of how you're feeling in real time, and then taking the steps that you need to be more effective and successful in your life. There's also ACT, which is acceptance and commitment therapy, which is similar, and it's about this idea of radical acceptance, right? Too, and which is a big mindfulness idea as well. That we can't change necessarily the condition that we're in, the circumstance that's happening, but we can change how we respond to it. So it's accepting what's happening, and then what we have control over is how we respond to what's happening. And again, that's a behavioral piece. How am I going to, be in this situation? What is my behavior going to be in this situation? Is it going to be life-affirming and self-affirming and healthy and feel good, or is it going to be self-destructive? And being able to, in real time, decide where you want to go. What are there more? I'm trying to think if I missed any.
I don't know, but you know what I'm thinking while you're saying that
Yeah.
is, okay, as a family member, you're in this kind of emergency response state a lot.
Yeah.
So using the modality of CBT or DBT would be to look at, okay, this is how I'm thinking about, like, I'm so scared right now that something's going to happen. This is what I do when I think something's going to happen. And then, but it's not a healthy thing that I'm doing. Like, it's not helping the situation. It's
Right.
actually perhaps exacerbating the situation. Or so you have someone who can look at those things and say, now try this, right?
Right. Right. Because our thoughts affect our emotions, right? So if your feelings, if you have this thought, something bad is going to happen, right? I don't know where my son or daughter is right now. I'm scared. Um, what that does is actually create more emotional dysregulation inside of you. And then the more emotionally dysregulated you are, the more panicked your thoughts are going to be. And it's like a never ending cycle. You're just going into a downward cycle where your thoughts are, negatively affecting your emotions, and your emotions are negatively affecting your thoughts. And so when you can find that first thought, I'm scared that something bad is going to happen, a cognitive behavioral therapist would help you say, okay, and then let's look at that thought. Is anything bad happening right now? No, right? Or you're in your kitchen and you're okay, and the thought is there, but let's just look at the thought as it is and see if we can find different thoughts that actually help your emotional state get better instead of, go downhill. Like, I don't know that anything is wrong right now, right? I haven't gotten a phone call right now.
Right.
It's very possible that everything is fine. And I've called the therapist, and I've called the treatment center, and I've called the family support person, and we're doing what we can to make things better and help yourself think in those ways. And you not only feel better, but you're more effective, right? You can actually affect change that way.
You're in action.
Yes,
You're,
exactly.
you're in action. So you're not like sitting in the pool of your dysregulation.
Right.
Um, when you have family members now in recovery and you're still in that state of fear or emotional dysregulation, it does a disservice to your loved one or your family member. So continuing in therapy and learning these practices and tools is a benefit to your loved one and
Yes.
to you.
Yes. I agree completely. And you know, the truth is too that when you have gone through a trauma, like having a son or daughter have a really difficult time, right, and be in crisis, it's really important to also recognize that a lot of that scared feeling can live in your body and live in your cells in a way that isn't necessarily um, accessible by your thoughts or your explicit brain function. And so and I really recommend for that reason body work, right? Yoga or somatic experiencing, or even EMDR talks a lot about what's going on with your body and body regulation. And do some energy work too, so that you can keep yourself energetically calm and feeling at peace. Because even if you're not saying to your family member, I'm still worried about you, I'm still so scared, I'm still so worried about you, I still think something's going to happen, I can't let that go, even if you're not saying those things but you're feeling them, they know,
They
right?
can feel it.
They
They can feel
absolutely
it.
feel it, and it makes them feel like, oh no, is something wrong going to happen? It gives them more stress, which isn't what they need, right? So um, the cognitive and behavioral stuff is really wonderful, but I also recommend body work for that reason too, so that everybody can take a breath
Mm-hmm.
and give the whole family system a chance to heal and find peace.
As a family member who, my recovery came through my son's recovery, and I grew up in an environment of addiction or substance use disorder. My mom had an alcohol use disorder, and my grandmother, and everybody in the family, it seems like. So we were conditioned not to treat that. We just ignored it. It just was the way they were. But in that critical way that it, or more acute way that it impacted my son, I started doing the things that he was doing through his treatment program on my own. So I did the energy work and somatic experiencing and the equine therapy. And I highly recommend those things too, because if you're running around in your house on fire, everybody else is going to feel on fire, right?
So
Afraid. And but if you're at peace, that also creates an environment that feels like peace.
Exactly. It was so helpful and so huge. And it reminds me of one thing that I forgot to mention about DBT. And the reason why so many people love DBT is because it also has this relationship component, interpersonal effectiveness component. And that is so important because we do affect each other, right? We do. Our relationships and our relationship patterns are huge in the formation of our identity and how we are in the world and what we choose, to do in the world. And so it's really important to know that we do affect each other and to accept that. I think in my other talk, I talked about, I often see parents, and this might just be an LA City thing, but they're like, I know I should have nothing to do with my kids because that's codependent and I don't want to be codependent. And so, there's this weird negative backlash about, don't be codependent, leave everybody alone, completely alone. And it's like, no, don't leave people alone. Your kids need you and you're affecting them, whether you're leaving them alone or not. And we have to recognize that healthy life is healthy interdependence. And we do all rely on each other and we do all affect each other. And it's so beautiful to recognize that. And exactly what you said, when we can get ourselves in a good space and a healthy space, we are going to be a positive influence to our family. And so people say to me, what's the number one thing I can do to help my family or to help my loved one get better? And I say, get yourself in a really strong, healthy place. That's the number one thing you can do. And that your energy and your influence with that person will be as effective as it can possibly be. It is about our own inner work and our own inner journey.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing all of that. Really, it is really mystical, and I think for a lot of people, it is scary to walk into that therapist's office for the first time, or to even admit that this is even going on in your family, whether it's with a child, with your parents, with your spouse, or your partner, or even someone in your extended family. You're just like, I don't feel right, but I don't know what to do. And just being able to walk in and somebody saying, okay, tell me what's going on, just tell me what's going on. And that must kind of impact, that might be more like the acceptance. What did you call it? Acceptance.
Yeah, there's radical acceptance, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's taking that moment to say, okay, this is happening.
Yeah.
What do I do? Right. And then accepting the practices or the
right.
Putting that into effect in your family. Is there anything you want to add before we sign off for today?
No, this was so fun. Thank you, Shelley. I always love talking with you. And thank you again for putting this on. And this conference is amazing. And I'm so glad that it exists. And I can't wait to tell everybody about it. And, I would just say to people, it is scary maybe to ask for help or to reach out. But to just know that there are lots of very compassionate, open people out there. And even if it's not a therapist, even if the therapist is too scary as your first step, please reach out and ask for help if you're struggling or somebody else is struggling, because there is support out there for you.
Yeah, there is a lot of support, and it might feel like there's none, because I remember feeling like everybody was telling me I was not alone, but I thought, well, I feel very alone right now. and you guys can say that all day long, but
Right.
but once you start getting connected, you start to, that hole that feels alone starts to go away. And now we have 30 some people that are willing and open to receive you and help you and answer your questions. In your practice, do you do Zoom therapy or do you only do in person?
I do. I actually use a confidential virtual therapy app called Simple Practice.
Okay.
And so, but yes, I definitely do online sessions because I do see people all over the country. So,
Okay, so people can reach out to you from this
yeah.
video if they're to start a conversation and to get the kind of support and help they need therapeutically with Dr. Holly Daniels.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Absolutely. And, and if it feels better to talk with somebody closer to your hometown, if we have a conversation, I can help you find somebody in your area too. So.
Okay, well, thank you. Thanks for sharing today.
Thank you, Shelley, so much. Take care.
Much appreciated.